We are coming to our second panel. Challenges in the Hyperloop ecosystem for freight transportation. And I'm very glad to present our panelists, starting with Erik Wirsing, VP Global Innovation of DB Schenker. Please come to me on my side. Then we have Alix Martinot-Lagarde, Deputy Chief Industry and Innovation Officer at Rail Logistics Europe. Welcome. Next is Lucienne Kross, Lead Smart Buildings and Cities at AIT InnoEnergy. Welcome. Then we have Andrés de León, CEO of Hyperloop TT. Welcome.
Thank you.
And Vlad Iorgulescu, COO of Swisspod Technologies. And backstage, we have two other candidates on the panel. Let's see. One is, there they are. Frank Busse, Associate Partner at HPC Hamburg Port Consulting, and Joachim von Winning, Executive Director, Air Cargo Community Frankfurt, in our heart of the round. So I would like to start this panel with a short video provided by Hyperloop TT and HHLI. So let's see if it's already there. Showing.
Introducing a new era in cargo transportation. Efficient and autonomous Hyperloop integrated ports, capable of airplane speeds at freight costs. Moving containers hundreds of kilometers in minutes instead of hours with zero emissions. Drastically reducing port congestion, pollution, and footprint. Reclaiming valuable waterfront property and moving ports inland. Resistant to all weather conditions. Transporting 2,800 containers a day on a single line system. A fully connected, sustainable system for balanced logistics. Revolutionizing cross-continental commerce. Welcome to a new era of sustainability, speed, and reliability. Welcome to the Hyperport.
I would like to start with Andrés, because you already talked a little bit in your keynote today about the Hyperport, but maybe you can already explain. I know the Big Bang is the ITS in Hamburg, but maybe you can explain already the idea of the Hyperloop concept behind Hyperport.
Well, basically, in our company we have different programs. We have a program for passenger, we have a program for freight, and we have a program for cargo, and the Hyperport program that is a specific application of the Hyperloop technology to moving containers. Hyperport is something that we developed together with Frank and his team, with the people, with Gerlinde, with the people of Hamburg Port. And the main idea was to create the Hyperloop of containers and the interface with the port operations. And I say in the interface with the port operations because I think that loading and unloading for everybody that is on cargo is one of the most important parts, of the equation. Okay? So we wanted to create something that was seamless and frictionless from the beginning, and that could be easily implemented in actual ports. Of course, there are different business cases, and we will talk about that later on, and I'm sure that Frank will explain different business cases that we have. But the whole idea was that, to create the Hyperloop of container with interface with the port operations.
Okay, thanks. So Frank, you were mentioned already. The Hyperport is an alliance between Hamburger Hafen Logistik AG and Hyperloop TT. Can you maybe please tell us a bit more about this alliance? How did it came about, and what are the goals of the alliance?
Sure. Thank you for having me here today, and to understand our alliance and the great opportunity we have with that is we have to know that HHLA, the Hamburg Hafen and Logistics AG, is a port and cargo operating company for more than 130 years in the port of Hamburg. And we are looking also for opportunities in other locations and other business areas. So we operate terminals in Hamburg, but we also operate terminals since a couple of years in Estonia and in Italy and in Ukraine. And we are every time looking for new business opportunities. One opportunity is how to use drones in ports and to use them for maintenance for cranes. And the other opportunity, one of the other opportunities, is the great chance to cooperate with Hyperloop TT to develop this hyperport. And what we know is how to handle cargo and especially containers during these days. And the combination with these excellent engineers from Hyperloop TT and with our cargo handling experience is a great mixture. And what we as HHLA really appreciated from the very beginning on, and for everybody who joined the keynote this morning, is that we do not only look on the technology side, but also on the commercial side. It was in the very first kickoff, we talked about business cases. How could this be a viable project beside all this hype around this nice new technology? And coming from Hamburg, we are also influenced by the serious Hanseatic merchant mindset, so we are looking for viable solutions. And the goal is actually to get the container in the Hyperloop system, and this is the goal in short. How can we do it in a viable way? How can we integrate such a new infrastructure and a new transport mode in an existing environment of ports, dry ports, hinterland hubs, and so on? And this also shows what kind of business cases in the back we are thinking about. It's a short distance to ports, to have an off-dock depot. We have inland hubs, how to connect a port to some 100 kilometers distance hub. Or, as we heard in Mike's summary of his masterclass, we also thought about land bridges. Why not doing a long distance connecting two coasts or whatever with a Hyperloop system?
So, Andrés, in the video, we have seen these cargo containers. What are the biggest challenges from your side or requirements in transporting containers from Hyperloop capsules?
I think that the biggest challenge has to do with the fact that the containers are big, as everybody knows, and they are heavy, okay? Yeah. So we basically have to adapt our system, to be able to manage that, okay? But also I think that a big challenge, so at the end of the day, we're talking about a system that is significantly bigger than a normal Hyperloop system, okay, in terms of diameter. But the other challenge was really all the process to arrive to this. We have been more than 2 years analyzing every single technical aspect, every single commercial aspect, and every single operational aspect. So to put together all of this in front of us with all the opportunities that we had, and to choose to take the right decisions, to analyze the trade-offs and all of that, that has been a challenge in itself, okay? But, as Frank was saying, we have been very lucky because at the end of the day, we have their experience. And we wanted to create something that was easy to commercialize. And this is the main point of the Hyperport. We're ready to commercialize this system. We will start discussions, we'll present in ITS, and we will start discussions with ports. We have even started some pre-commercial discussions with some of them, and we believe that there are real opportunities in today. We don't need to wait a lot, to arrive to this.
Interesting. So, and Do you have already plans, Mary Frank? What are the next steps of the alliance? Are there already agreements?
So after completing these concepts and seeing this video, what we created, the next step and milestone you already mentioned, Sarah, which is the ITS Congress in Hamburg, mid of October, where we present a virtual reality model of the Hyperport. So you get an VR goggle and then you can walk through the Hyperport, which is a very nice experience. And you are all invited to Hamburg to join this. And to bring this further, so we also need some proof, build something, so to show the world that it's really working. So next steps will be more going into the market, more involving potential users of this system, and to understand more what are they willing to pay for transport, and yeah, to get a better idea about is the market willing to pay a larger tube for a larger tube. This is what Andrés mentioned, and this is really a fact. And yeah, this has to be investigated further.
So maybe a discussion partner could be Alix. So Alix, from your perspective, what are the biggest challenges in rail logistics from your perspective, and which prerequisites needs to be fulfilled when shifting containers from rail to Hyperloop?
Well, the first thing we are facing is a question of capacity. In the rail business, we have only the capacity remaining after the passenger, I would say. But let's take the assumption that this point, just because it's a new infrastructure, will be solved. And then we have flexibility and cost. If we look at flexibility, a full train is 40 containers. A pod is 1 container. So that's really an opportunity, because instead of having a full train with a fixed departure and so on, you can have 40 departure different with the right departure according to our client needs. But this will be okay only if we have a network, and only if at the end, because at the beginning this network will not cover, let's say, all Europe, for example. Then we need to have work on the intermodality, just to make the right transfer from Hyperloop to road to train or whatever, just to ensure the last mile. And then the last point is price, of course. We are competing every day with road price, which are very low, which means that on one side, we need that you build something very competitive. On the other side, I must insist of the interoperability of the system, because every company today has many great ideas, has many great way to imagine Hyperloop, but at the end, we need only one network, and we don't need what we have today in rail, which means that when we arrive at the border, it's just a nightmare to say, okay, I need to change locomotive, I need to change driver, I need to make whatever security check, just because everybody thinks that he's in his country, he knows what is security, and maybe the other doesn't know, which is not obviously the case. And then we lose hours, whereas at the same time, the truck is still running, and when I'm ready to go, the truck has done maybe 200 and 300 kilometers.
So maybe coming to Joachim. Right now you're responsible for the air cargo community Frankfurt. And what about, because right now you're number one, Europe's number one, what about the vision that you will be air and Hyperloop cargo community in the future? So do you think a concept like Hyperport may also apply for Fraport?
For Frankfurt Airport, probably being one of the places where you could link intercontinental air cargo routes with, say, hinterland traffic for the rest of Europe. If you looked at the passenger ideas that also linked Frankfurt with other cities, that would be a part where we can feed from long-haul flights into the system to have fast connections to other places. Having said that, time, although air cargo is quick, is not that much of an essence in the hinterland traffic. Usually a shipment sits about 18 hours in the warehouse before it's collected by the freight forwarder. So saving 7 or 6 or 4 hours on routes to, say, up to Hamburg or down to Milan from our airports is not saving that much time. On the other hand, if the infrastructure is available and it's easy to put the cargo into the pods, with the shortage of truck drivers we have at the moment, and that will increase in future as well, we would utilize a network like this with air cargo as well.
And you already mentioned some points, but where do you see opportunities or challenges in an intermodal approach regarding air and Hyperloop?
I'm a bit worried about space constrictions at the traffic hubs. So if you have a Hyperloop track that ends in Frankfurt or has a station in Frankfurt, where would that be, and how would you feed air cargo into it? So if passenger is the main focus, then it should be near the terminals, or it should be downtown, and we have to transport air cargo from the cargo terminals to those stations or intermodal hubs. If it's closer to the air cargo area, then you have to transport the passengers. If it's two different tube types, it's two different systems, then I'm not sure if the volume is enough to actually have an extra cargo track. So trying to squeeze anything, if it's a railway line, if it's an additional motorway, it's even an additional tram line into a highly densely populated area like we have around Frankfurt will be, I think, the most challenging part of interconnecting different modes of transport.
So maybe anyone else has an idea where the most potential could be when we talk about that?
I think maybe we can look at the broader spectrum here. I mean, when we look at the logistic chain, there are quite a few areas, links where we can contribute with Hyperloop. Of course, freight transportation is one of them, and containers is one of them. But from the port, when it goes to a distribution hub inland, then perhaps we're talking about palletized goods, which is another story altogether, and how that is transported is, of course, another item that can be brought on the table for the Hyperloop system. And if we go down even further, we are looking at parcels, which can actually be transported using similar systems and benefiting from this enclosed and separate system that is not shared with any other stakeholders. It's actually something that offers the system's resilience, scalability, reliability, and of course adaptability. So I would say that perhaps goods that require fast shipment, like in commerce, e-commerce, of course, would potentially be areas of interest for Hyperloop, especially because, as you mentioned, trucking transportation is currently at full capacity, and we are seeing an increase in demand, of course. And with the 2020 lockdown situation, we've seen an acceleration in the demand increase for e-commerce, about 30%. So all that capacity has to be complemented somehow beyond trucking. And Hyperloop can actually be a good solution for that system as well.
Okay. Yeah. So Erik, what questions do you have from a user perspective towards Hyperloop Freight?
Actually, as a logistic person, I would love that Hyperloop would already be existing, because we, as already said, we have several challenges now with a truck driver shortage already. Yeah. Because I don't know if most of you know what the average age of a German truck driver at the moment is. So we are talking about ages around 58. So we have a big issue here. We have in America 56, we have in Australia 65. So we are running really out of truck drivers, and UK is the best example at the moment. More than 100,000 truck drivers are really missing at the moment. So the attractiveness of a job profile as a truck driver is not that good at the moment. So we really have to make it more attractive, and attractiveness could be that the truck drivers every day at home. So using them for the short distances, and for the long distances we need something different. And then, of course, the Hyperloop system could be perfect fit. for the truck driver shortage, of course, as well for the decarbonization, because that is something what our customers all are demanding. So they all have a big issue and big topic with the topic, how many CO2 consumptions does my shipment requires? What do I have there when I'm transporting something from A to B? And actually, a lot of customers are demanding that, Schenker, if you are able to do even more CO2 neutral transportation, you've got even more shipments. We would love to do that, but there is nothing possible. Electromobility is somewhere coming. But actually, at the moment, that would be really the right moment to establish that, because we're all talking about Friday for Future and all the sustainability topics. And even here with a logistic company like Schenker or DHL or all the others as well, we have several connections all over Europe. We are driving every day the same distances. So we have thousands of distances from Madrid to Paris to Moscow, whatever. So the truck drivers are every day using the same track, and it's a part of calculation. So therefore, the biggest question mark for us at the moment is, when will it be there? What are the first tracks? What are we allowed to travel? Is dangerous goods also be possible to transport? Because 20% of our shipments are dangerous goods. So will that be possible? And of course, what kind of legal circumstances are that? Is it rail freight? Is it land transport? Is it air freight? I don't know. That would be a great question, because if it would be the regulation about air freight, then we're talking about X-ray scan and all this crazy stuff. I don't hope that. So land transport would be the best, but these kind of challenges are to tackle. And then, of course, using then the ports that are already in plan would be fantastic. The long distance, and then with cargo bikes or short distance traveling or heavy lifted cargo drones, that could be then the last mile delivery.
So maybe the question goes to Vlad and Andrés then. So which kind of freight will be the first on the commercial market and when?
Okay, so before answering that question, let me answer some of the ones that he has put on the table.
Of course, do it.
Look, first of all, we fully agree with your analysis. One, curiously, the shortage of truck drivers was one of the main points that we wanted to solve. The other was the congestion in the ports. And the third is the fact that when you think in e-commerce and, for instance, I was explaining this morning, Inditex is moving now 50% of their goods just from China to Europe, by air, because they need, to be answering very fast to the demand and to change in the demand. So we will put all this and we create the puzzle, how we could solve it. And not everything is going to be solved by Hyperport. Of course, there will be things that is Hyperport, and there will be things where a normal Hyperloop system you will be, using ULDs or using by pallet or parcels or these kind of things. Okay, so these are the opportunities. When it's going to be? It's not easy to answer that question now, but just because we are launching the concept, I really believe that Hyperport probably is going to be one of our first projects. Even if we have been working with in passenger, and everybody knows that our company was very focused on passenger from the beginning, because we thought that first of all, we needed to create the excitement in the community, and second, we needed to engineerize the system, to be able to move passengers. Okay? But since we started also with Hyperport, and we started also on our third program, that is what we call a light freight program, we really believe that there are big opportunities. Sorry, I'm not answering today, but if you ask me in 6 months, maybe I can answer that question easily, because we are already starting some conversations, and we believe that there will be opportunities that should come, I'd say, in the next year, probably.
Yep. And I really believe we need another transport mode, because all the other transport modes are fully on their capacity limits.
Yeah.
As you see at the moment, there are no containers available. We are now already starting with the first truck drivers from China to Germany, because planes are full, ocean freight is full, train traffic not possible. So really, truck drivers starting from China to Germany. Yeah. And that's crazy. So that would be
crazy. Imagine if you could move things, from Hyperloop in the famous Silk Road in hours, instead of in weeks. That would be amazing. Absolutely. And that's what we are working on. But again, that will not come tomorrow. But I think that other kind of systems, small distance and very specialized in freight, could come quite fast.
I would add to this that in order for us to properly estimate which of these cargo types will be transported first, we have to look at the cost of the infrastructure first, because it's a new infrastructure, and if we are transporting containers, that comes with a cost. If we're transporting pallets, it comes with another cost. And each of these has its advantages and disadvantages, and perhaps an analysis looking at where the most value can be added at the lowest cost, so the path of least resistance would be, then we can probably estimate much better which of these modes of transportation, modes of cargo would be first used. I would tend to go towards smaller goods that are more time critical, but that is something we are currently looking into more actively at the moment. So I wouldn't exclude any option right now.
if I could add, it, from a air cargo point of view, probably the goods that have the most need of quick transport inside Europe, coming from long-distance flights from Africa, Latin America, are perishables. Unfortunately, those are actually those that have the least money to spend on transport because they're very, very price sensitive. On the other hand, giving an extra day shelf life on a fresh fish or some fruits, that would actually make a difference in reaching wholesale markets and fresh food markets from different airports and ports inside Europe. But then they don't have the money.
Fully agree.
So maybe when it comes to challenges in general, Lucienne, which role does renewable energy play in the Hyperloop technology? And what are current challenges or questions that need to be answered in that case?
The ambition, of course, is completely sustainable, not just being more energy efficient, no noise production, no fine dust and all of it, but being completely sustainable. Not sure if we will get there, because of course in the end it's a matter of where do you build it? Is there enough sustainable energy available at the right cost? Mm-hmm. But simply listening to all the presentations this morning, and everyone was very consistent in a kind of an average, what will be the energy consumption, or at least the energy demand of the Hyperloop system, and they came up with only 10% compared to air flights, but still it's only 10%. And that's easier to fill in with sustainable energy, being hydropower, PV on the tubes or whatsoever, than any other kind of transport system. It's beating electric vehicles. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So maybe another topic, but I had some discussions with Erik in the past, and he's positioning as a user when it comes to Hyperloop Freight. But Alix, what do you think? Do you see today's rail logistics operator as a user or an operator when you think about the Hyperloop concept of freight?
Well, in fact, it depends. I will adapt. My main question will be, how can I secure a quality and capacity for my client? Mm-hmm. If I can be only a user, that's perfect. I like them all the capex, and I'm only buying flexible cost. If to secure this capacity, I need to, I don't know, rent on a long-term basis and manage a fleet of boats, that could be a solution too, and that roughly the job of an operator. But both options are, for the time being, still open. My only point would be, how can I give the right service to my client?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Good thought. So, and maybe Joachim, aside from Hyperloop, do you see other disruptive forms of transport on the horizon coming?
No, not really. I mean, in air cargo or in aviation overall, we have a lot of pressure in reducing our carbon footprint. So we are looking more into sustainable aviation fuels to tackle these problems, because we don't have a mode of transport for long-haul flights that offers the same density of energy to carry with you when you're flying. So we have some trials with electric trucking, with power lines connecting Darmstadt with Frankfurt at the moment, a big trial going on. But it doesn't change the overall, it's not really disruptive compared with what Hyperloop has to offer.
Okay, thank you.
Maybe just adding on that, because I think one disruption that is maybe very close in front of us is autonomous driving. Yeah. And you might have heard that Germany has now really brought up a new law, and they will really change the law in Germany, that autonomous driving level 4, and that would really mean in the business context you don't need a driver. And when you're then connecting then two branches, so two official terminals from us or other branches, then really you can't, there's a possibility that you don't need a driver any longer. And then we're talking about somehow the same case, because our case is bringing shipments or cargo from A to B in the most efficient way. And Hyperloop is one way, the rail is another way. But if there's no truck driver needed because running out of truck drivers, if the car is driving by themselves, why not? So then that's jobs to be done is more or less similar.
Yeah.
And that is coming soon. So I think next year already somehow available. Technology-wise, already the first companies are prepared for that. So then let's see.
I would say that the downside to that is the fact that you share the infrastructure with other stakeholders. And
True.
Even if it's an autonomous vehicle, you're still prone to congestion. And that is something that impedes the flow of goods. So having a separate system that can be dynamically adapted to the need is actually something that would be desirable. And on top of that, I would say that the system, the infrastructure right now runs at full capacity and sometimes even beyond. So obviously, a new mode of transportation would complement that, and Hyperloop can fill in that role.
But then the advantage is that you already have the infrastructure, and especially at nighttime, the infrastructure is not congested in Europe. And with autonomous driving, you could use the night hours to have goods on the motorways, existing motorways, connecting major cargo hubs.
Well, I think that this is not one thing or the other. I think that we need to push all the efforts and all the alternatives that allow us to a decarbonization transportation. Okay, so it's not that there will be places where autonomous vehicles is going to solve, especially the problem of truck drivers that is huge, is really a big problem right now. And there will be areas where it make more sense, to have a fully stable and reliable system, but in a closed environment that you tell because you have a demand that is stable and you can move. So I think that we need to work in both scenarios, and it's not one or the other. It's just pushing everything that can allow us to go to a greener future.
Agreed.
Good. Vlad, you already mentioned some points, but I'm wondering if you can give just an overview about how the Hyperloop technology can be a game changer in mobility. From various perspectives, so economically, environmentally. Maybe you can give just a short summary on that.
Sure. So I think in the environmental aspect, we should take a snapshot of what the situation is right now so that we have a benchmark to compare. We know that we have to reduce the carbon footprint of the logistic chain, and right now transportation is responsible for almost a quarter of global CO2 emissions, with freight being accounted for 1/3 of that, and the demand is increasing. Hyperloop is well positioned to complement the efforts towards electrification of this transportation system towards a carbon neutral logistic chain. But when we talk about that, we have to look at the entire system, not only the vehicles themselves. Yes, the vehicles are electric, and because of that, the source of energy can be green. But then you have also efficiency in the way the system is designed. So there is no friction. You actually optimize the energy consumption based on your needs. So the system can be easily adapted based on demand and energy availability. But the other aspect here is the actual infrastructure, which is not yet built, but that actually is a great opportunity for us to design the infrastructure as a carbon sink. So there are methods that are available today with current technology to capture carbon in concrete and use methods to have zero carbon footprint steel. So when we do design and build the infrastructure, we have to take into account that it has to be sustainable from the onset. I think that is one critical aspect when we think about building new things, especially that the infrastructure will probably last for hundreds of years if maintained correctly. Now, on the economic aspect, I think there's a growing trend towards reshoring. So that means that most of the activities for manufacturing that were usually done offshore now return to homeland, so to speak. That is driven by consumer demand for locally sourced products, is driven by the need to have a traceability and circular economy. but that actually increases even more the demand on intracontinental transportation systems. So we are already having systems that are run at full capacity, as I said, and everyone said at the very beginning. On top of that, we have the growth in e-commerce, which is 30%, as I said, in 2020. And that comes with a high degree of volatility. So when it comes to volatility, this creates a kind of friction between shippers and third-party logistic suppliers. On the other hand, shippers want to have no moving stock, because that means locked-in money. And on the other hand, third-party logistic suppliers want long-term commitments. This kind of friction can be solved with a dynamic system that can respond to demand in real time. So we don't know the demand that will come, but we can react to it fairly quickly. And that is actually important, because even though we will have autonomous trucks, we will have all sorts of vehicles that can amend this need, we are pushing existing infrastructure to the limit. We are pushing it even beyond the limit. What that means is that in order for us to build an infrastructure that is built for resilience, we have to start from scratch. We have to look at the system from the day on and build it in such a way that it is sustainable, adaptable, scalable, and resilient. And I think if we manage to do these things, then we set a good foundation for a logistic chain that is carbon neutral and flexible enough for the future.
Lucienne, InnoEnergy invested in 2 Hyperloop startups, so Celeros and Hard Hyperloop, and that's actually the prerequisite of pushing Hyperloop technology into the market, and it's really necessary. Maybe you can say a little bit about what the reasons were for the investments.
Yeah, actually, already a lot of arguments passed by during this discussion. Just to summarize a few, if you really look to the ambition of Europe, completely decarbonized in 2050, and look at the technology and everything that is put in place today, then we won't make it. So you need to have something disruptive. There are only a few options that answer to that disruption. Hyperloop is one of them. It sounds like a moonshot. At the same time, if you really look into the technology, it's very close by. And add on to that, it's the sustainability level, of course, but then the pitch from my neighbor over there, we want it today. We have some more business cases, even some numbers for the benefit cost ratios compared to other public transportation. Then, yeah, you need to invest today. Why in 2 companies and not in 1? Well, we are technology agnostic. We don't want to pick the right technology. That's not our business. But we do believe in a network to make it happen. You really need an interconnected and interoperable network in Europe and across the world. So that needs to be in the genes of the startups, and both of them have it. Network, interoperability, a good team. I almost forgot about it. It always starts with a good team. If you don't have the right people in, it won't fly. And, well, it made sense.
Thank you. Oh, we're running out of time. Actually, it's already time to get some closing words from all of you. So I don't know, if we start with Vlad, maybe. Do you want to start your closing words?
Yeah. So I think we're at the moment we are in a moment where we can decide what happens next in terms of how the logistic, and not only logistics for cargo, but for people only, look like in the future. It is a moment where we can actually start to make a difference and build a foundation for the future, for a future-proof infrastructure. And in order to do that, we need to work together, all stakeholders involved, because I think that yes, one pilot project is interesting, it's a good use case study, but in order to scale up from that to a wide adoption, we have to have all hands on deck. Regardless of what technology or agenda everyone has, we have to work together towards that goal. I think this is what we're standing here for, all of us.
Thank you. Andrés?
Well, I think that the main takeaway that I take from this conference is something that was said this morning by somebody from the Ministry of Transport. We don't need subsidies. We don't need public help. We don't need that. We need contracts. We need contracts. We need people, you know, we need the big companies in Europe, the big operators, the big transportation operators, infrastructure operators, understanding that it's time to bet on this technology, you know, and understand that they have to be part of that. We need people like you know, believing in the Hyperloop and asking for the Hyperloop tomorrow, you know. That's what we need, because the technology is there. The technology is ready. We are ready to build. We can build the Hyperloop tomorrow. Of course, we have an incremental prototyping solution, and if somebody tells you that it's going to build tomorrow the Hyperloop of 10 years, it's going to die you. We are building the Hyperloop that we can build today, that is very efficient, very sustainable, and that in all the studies that we have done, we have demonstrated that makes economical sense. But we need contracts. We need people believing, we need the industry endorsing this, we need the legacy transportation industry putting themselves in the boat, okay? And we all doing like this together, you know, to arrive to the destination.
Joachim.
I'm really glad that he said he doesn't want subsidies, as well as I'm really happy that I learned on this conference that cargo is in the minds of the people developing Hyperloops already at this stage. And I also learned that Hyperloop solves the problem that we have when we try to put air cargo on railways, where we had to fill a full train with 40 containers, and that doesn't match with the necessities of air cargo. So filling a pot is much easier. Looking forward to have a nice station in Frankfurt where we can feed into the pan-European network.
Lucienne.
Timing is now.
Good. Frank.
Yes, we have the opportunity to rethink the end-to-end supply chain. This is also just to add some new points to our closing words here. This is really an opportunity from our side as the logistics operator, saying, okay, autonomous driving, these Hyperloop transport, and really rethink the end-to-end logistics. And also we have to discuss and work on the operator model. Also something, is there an infrastructure operator or is the infrastructure operator also operating the capsules? Are there only capsule operators? Are there hyperport operators only? And so on and so on. There are different combinations possible. We have calculated some of them. And yeah, it was a very inspiring day for me, and thanks a lot to all of you.
Thank you. Alix.
Well, I fully agree with what you just said about the necessity to understand what would be the role of each of the actors. And then the second thing I want to insist is that speed has not the same value from one market to another. And then today we can address those who really need speed. But if there is a real speed network through Europe or through any other continent, then maybe industry will change their mind and change the way they imagine supply chain based on this speed, and that will be another step in the growth of the volume that could be in the Hyperloop system.
Mm-hmm. Erik.
And so just to underline once more what I've said before, so it would be great to have it now, because again, we are running out of capacity. Of course, I think the actual transport modes, land freight, air freight, rail freight, ocean freight, I think there are still some options to optimize it a little bit more. But in the end, logistics is booming. We are logistics system relevant, what we learned last year. So we are really system relevant. And therefore, connecting the long distances is absolutely our target. And having a CO2 neutral transportation mode, we all have CO2 targets that we want to be CO2 neutral in the next years. So that can't be established with the existing transportation possibilities with land freight or ocean freight or air freight. A lot of good things were coming, but I think what you also said, Frank, really the end-to-end, somehow a Hyperloop concept must be connected to ports with a last mile delivery, picking up with rail freight, with ocean freight, with whatever. In the end, the Hyperloop will not stop on your private house. So somehow you have to find a way how to connect that. And maybe last comment as a logistic person, when somebody is starting to build up the first tubes, we would love to do that.
It was such a pleasure to have you here today. Thank you so much for the discussions, which is, of course, the starting point for further discussions to realize the Hyperloop system. So very, very much thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks a lot.
Okay, looking forward to come up to the hall again.
Yes.